Good morning everyone, it's really good to be with you today. Today I'm going to tell you a story from the Bible, and it's a really short story. In fact, it's only one verse long, not a long story at all. And it happens a long time ago and involves a man that's not very famous at all. If we think about some of the really famous people from the Bible like Noah and Moses and David, but this man, the man in this story, was called Shamgar. And he's not very famous at all, but I want to tell you about him this morning because he did an amazing thing. The story takes place a long time ago. Now, some of you might remember that way back in the book of Exodus, the Israelites were slaves in Egypt, and Moses leads them out of Egypt, across the Red Sea, and then eventually into the promised land, the land, the country that God had given them. And then after they'd been in that land for quite a few years, they got kings. Firstly, they got King Saul, then King David, then lots of other kings after that. And this story takes place after Moses had brought them out of Egypt, but before they got a king. And in those days, they needed someone kind of to rule them or look after them, and those people were called the judges. And this story is in the book of Judges. So Israel didn't have a king, but they had a series of people called judges that would kind of save Israel, because at that time, in the same region that the Israelites were living in, there was other people as well. There were people called the Moabites, and there was the Amalekites and the Ammonites and the Philistines, and all these people didn't like the Israelites, and they would be mean to them, and they'd try and get them to be their slaves. And then every so often, one of the Israelites would rise up and save the Israelites from the people that were being mean to them. And that's the background to this story. And Shamgar was one of these people that saved the Israelites. And I want you to read the one verse. It's actually only one sentence that the Bible says about Shamgar. It's in Judges chapter 3, and it's verse 31. And it says, Shamgar, son of Anath, struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel. So there was two sentences actually. At the end it says, he too saved Israel. But that's what Shamgar did. It says, his dad was called Anath, and Shamgar struck down 600 Philistines to save Israel with an ox goad. Let's think about that story in a little bit more detail. So, here we have Shamgar, and Shamgar's holding an ox goad. Shamgar, do you want to wave your ox goad so we can all see it? There we go. And an ox goad was a tool that farmers used to have. Now, obviously in those days they didn't have tractors, so if they wanted to plough a field, for example, they got their ox, who would get a kind of plough tied onto him, and the ox would plough the field. And sometimes the ox got a little bit distracted. Maybe it saw some nice dandelions it wanted to chew, or it got a bit lazy and wanted to have a sleep. And the job of the ox goad was to poke the ox to keep it going. So, if ox here gets a little bit sleepy and goes, oh, I don't feel like ploughing anymore, Shamgar would give it a poke and the ox would get going again. So an ox goad definitely wasn't a fighting tool. It was a farming tool. And that's what Shamgar struck down 600 Philistines with. A bit like this. Wow. So he struck down 600 Philistines with his ox goad. And why did he use an ox goad? Why didn't he use a sword? A sword would seem a more sensible thing to go into battle with, or a spear, or a dagger and a shield and a suit of armour. And it's because an ox goad is what Shamgar had. That's what he had available. I'm sure if he'd had lots and lots of swords and lots of spears, that's what he would have used. But Shamgar struck down the Philistines with an ox goad because that's what he had available to him at that moment. God's amazing. He can do extraordinary, life-changing things through us with what we've got available. He can do life-changing, extraordinary, amazing things through us with what we've got available at the moment, with what we've got available today. And there are lots of things that we sometimes think, like we might think, I'm so busy and so hectic at the moment, and God will be able to do amazing things through me in the future when I have more time available. Or we might think, I'm shy and I don't like speaking in front of lots of people, and God will be able to do amazing things through me in the future when I'm more confident. Or kids and youth, we might think, I'm young and God will be able to do amazing things through me in the future when I'm an adult. But Shamgar didn't have a sword, and he didn't have a spear, and he didn't wait until he had lots of swords and lots of spears. God used Shamgar to do an amazing thing with what he had available at that moment. So this week, this month, as we get towards Christmas, God can do amazing, life-changing, extraordinary things through us with what we've got available at the moment. He can encourage people, inspire people. He can use us to show people God's love. He can use us to reveal Jesus to people. He can use us to bless people with what we've got available to us at the moment. If we've only got half an hour this week because we've got a really, really busy, hectic week, and if we have half an hour, God can use that half an hour to do something amazing. If we've only got £1, God can use that pound to do an amazing thing this week. If kids, we've only got a pencil and some paper, God can use that pencil and that paper to do an amazing thing for a neighbour or a friend or a relative, something that can inspire them or encourage them or bless them, something that might change their life. God, I believe, wants, and he is certainly able to do an amazing thing through us with what we have available at the moment. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a really, really, really good week. God bless.